Okay, so welcome to Nutrition and Healthy Hormones. This is actually a really good topic. I had two things that we could choose from. The first being mindset, which is also another really passionate topic of mine. But I also find there's a lot of, information out there about nutrition. And when we link it to hormones, it makes a lot of sense about what sort of foods we should be eating. So I'm really simple in the way I approach nutrition. And the reason I am is because I've seen so much, I guess, complex meal plans and diets and fads and things that are always out there. But I think we can also take a little bit from everything. And one of the values I have when it comes to nutrition is fuel your body that suits you. So there's no point following a complicated or complex meal plan that's not going to be sustainable. If right now your food plan that you're on, you don't feel as though that's something you can sustain into your 80s and 90s, then you want to try and find something that's obviously A, healthy, B, is going to support your hormone health, which is why you're obviously tuned in to today's webinar. And C, once again, something that you can see yourself doing for the long term. So that's basically what I like to, or how I like to view nutrition, and something that I'm really passionate about, just bringing some simplicity into the whole nutrition things, as into the nutrition topic. Biosignature is my background. If you've done the last two webinars, I won't stay too long on this because I'll be repeating myself a little bit. It's basically the study of how hormone imbalances can lead to stubborn areas of body fat. Things like poor sleep, low energy, brain function can all be, I guess, impacted by hormones. So what biosignature does is it just basically brings those things to your awareness, and then you can start to do things like nutrition, which is what we're doing today, training, supplementation, and lifestyle modifications to help correct those hormonal imbalances. There's no such thing as a quick fix. There's no such thing as a magic pill. But what I believe is that understanding how your body works hormonally is one of the, ways we can obviously improve our quality of life, but also shed some light on how and why our body stores fat. So today we're going to go through what hormones are impacted by nutrition, what we can do to help improve hormone imbalance through nutrition, and what's the best protocols for nutrition and things that are going to help you balance your hormones and obviously shred fat. That's what we want. We don't want to have stubborn areas of body fat. That can lead to health issues. It doesn't necessarily mean we want to be lean, mean machines, but we certainly don't want to be carrying excess body fat for health reasons. We want to feel better in our clothes and obviously feel stronger and feel like we've got that quality of life, which I think is really what it's all about. So they're the things that we're going to be looking at today. The first two hormones I'm going to speak about, which really are the key hormones that can help with metabolism and can help with stubborn areas of body fat. Some of this might be repetitive if you've done my last two webinars, cellulite and hormone balance, and also belly fat and hormones. If you've done those two, you might find that there's a bit of repetition, but they all link in together. So you need to address your food, but there's also other aspects that we need to address as well. Insulin's role is to metabolize or break down carbs into glucose. Now that's what our muscles use for energy. That's what our brain uses to think. A diet too high in carbs, it leads to too much insulin being produced. And rather than insulin doing its job, which is to break down carbs, we start to build up this insulin resistance. So it stops doing its job, and it can lead to weight gain. And in particular, when you link it back to biosig or biosignature, it's around that love handle and back fat area. They're generally what we call carbohydrate metabolism markers. And we really find that insulin, when controlled, is one of the key hormones to addressing body fat on those two areas of the body. What we do find also is when insulin is out of whack, so is cortisol. So when insulin's out of whack, it puts stress on the body. When our blood sugar crashes, particularly, which is usually from, a mismanaged or poor, diet choices, we can increase our cortisol production. We've also shown, or in Biosig, we've also shown that cortisol leads to stubborn areas of body fat. And where this shows is around that navel area. There tends to be cortisol receptors around that area. So often when people say, oh, I've got that kind of cortisol pouch, it's like below the navel, doesn't matter what I do, I can, exercise till the cows come home, I can get that good nutrition plan, but I often find that that's really a stubborn area. So often I find that that can really come down to obviously stress management, but also other stresses on the body. So when we're linking that to diet, we also want to try and balance insulin and blood sugar. Other things that I haven't written there are things like just looking at your overall stimulants like caffeine, looking at the foods that, can increase cortisol. Caffeine's certainly not bad, and cortisol is not a bad hormone at all. It's just when the body's out of whack, and in particular insulin, if our diet's poor, if we're not managing blood sugar, then too much of that hormone also can lead to not only body fat gain, but other adrenal issues, things like, well, I've got Emma on here. She's got an adrenal issue called Graves. There's chronic fatigue. There's all these other, adrenal symptoms that people are really discovering in this century. They're cluing onto it now, but it's really our fast-paced, stressful lifestyle. So it is an important hormone to be aware of, and know that our diet does impact it. So what we choose, and also, controlling insulin will help control cortisol. So what are the best foods to eat for insulin and cortisol? Anything that promotes insulin sensitivity. So in the last slide, I mentioned insulin resistance. So that's when the body, or the insulin, stops doing its job. The body starts storing body fat. It doesn't break down carbohydrates well. So we want to reverse that. So fats actually really help with increasing what we call our insulin receptors, so that when we do eat a carbohydrate, rather than store it as body fat, we actually will metabolize it and use it for fuel. So things that promote insulin sensitivity are all very good, and there's a list there. That's just an extract out of my Eat for Hormone Balance ebook, which I'll speak about more at the end. And also anything that helps support healthy blood sugar management. So eating frequently. I know people are maybe on a fasting nutrition plan, which is absolutely fine. It's just knowing what you're doing with that and making sure that, you're doing it safely so that your blood sugar is not crashing. Just say you eat something really high insulin response. So let's give an example, white rice, or something really high in processed carbohydrates like a donut. What's going to happen is your body or your blood sugar is going to spike up and then it's going to crash. So when it crashes, cortisol releases, but also that insulin resistance starts kicking in. So the next time you go to eat a meal, it's going to be harder for your body to break down, that carbohydrate. So anything that helps support healthy blood sugar management is going to be really good for insulin sensitivity and weight management and hormone health. I've got here adding lemon and lime and cinnamon. That helps lower the insulin response on food. So often if we try to reduce the amount of insulin our body's producing overall, doesn't mean we cut carbohydrates out completely. That's kind of like, I guess, like a keto style of thinking. It definitely works. Is it sustainable? There's a big question mark on that. But certainly with looking at the science behind it, if we reduce the amount of insulin response from lowering our overall carbohydrate intake, then it makes sense that that's going to help with our weight management, blood sugar management. It's going to help promote insulin sensitivity, because more than likely to get the fuel into your body, you're going to be eating more of these foods, so more of your fatty foods, fatty fish, nuts and seeds, MCT oil, all of those on that list are really, really good for insulin sensitivity. So the next two hormones I wanted to speak about were ghrelin and leptin. Ghrelin is one of those hormones that gets spoken about quite a bit. That's the one that says, I am hungry. So often it's that one that, you can't switch it off. It says you have to eat something right now. And, it's a very good hormone to have. We need to have this in order to get that blood sugar management up there. Without it, if you're not feeling hungry for no reason, that can, not be a good thing either. The leptin is the opposite in the sense that it sends a message to your brain saying, I'm satisfied. So the two work together. When they're in balance, you'll have that no appetite, which I'm sure you've all experienced at different times, or you'll be hungry or insatiable. You'll be hungry all the time or insatiable, or you'll have both. So balancing ghrelin and leptin. So basically with ghrelin and leptin, they are quite, sensitive to diets. So if we start going on something that's going to restrict calories, if we start going on something that's, quite, I don't know, just a bit radical, then often what happens, and you know it yourself, often what happens is you start to feel hungrier. You start to kind of want all those foods you shouldn't have. So basically what we want to do is when we're looking at our nutrition and we're changing things, we want to do it gradually, but we certainly don't want to be restricting calories. So if you're the type of person who's a little bit carb heavy and you're reducing those carbohydrates, the worst thing you could do is not eat. So you need to swap out whatever that food is that you're trying to improve with something that's going to help improve your hormone balance. So for example, if I was eating, say, I'm just trying to think, like a clean brownie, even with, dates, and could have a bit of rice malt syrup, that's quite a high insulin response food. That if you are having that as a snack, as opposed to, say, a handful of nuts, or if you're having a little bit of, scrambled egg and avocado, what you'll find is that overall your blood sugar is going to be more stable having the avocado and eggs. But if you cut out the dates, or you cut out the more higher insulin response food, you don't just not want to eat, because then what you'll find is that your body will be looking, for other foods, and often that's when the binge eating cycle comes in. So definitely don't restrict calories. In fact, you want to have load days. So every 7 days is a minimum, okay? Some people that their metabolisms are quite, good. They're quite what I call carb tolerant, which means they can have a lot of high carbs in their nutrition plan. Then they would be looking at, load days, maybe 3 days over a 7-day week. I find 2 works well for myself. That is sustainable for me. And those people that are looking to sort of kickstart their metabolism might just start with 1. But again, you have to try and do a little bit of trial and error, because if you drop down to 1 and that's like going to set you off, your ghrelin off, then you'll be back in the same situation where you're, feeling hungry, and you don't really know why you can't stay off the higher energy carb foods. So again, looking at keeping those hormones balanced whilst you're trying to change your nutrition habits. But have load days. They're really important. A lot of people, when they start my program, they get a bit of a surprise that they get load days, and it's necessary. Without it, your hormones will get a little bit of a whack, I guess, and they certainly can be prone to imbalance. So keep them balanced, have your load days, have those, 2 days a week, 1 as a bare minimum. Avoid highly palatable processed foods. So again, ghrelin will be increased when you have foods with a bliss point. A bliss point is basically a food that's been manufactured with the exact amount or the right amount of protein, fats, and carbs to send a response to your brain that it wants more. And in the States, we had a lady come over here from Texas, and they do it in the States. They actually hook up kids. It sounds like child abuse to me, but it makes a lot of sense why kids want more and more and more. They set them up to neurotransmitters, so they look at their brains when they're eating food, and it's actually the bliss point is actually a neurological response to the food. So the company knows they've put the right amount of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates in a food to get that neurological response. So if we avoid these foods, then we're less likely to set off ghrelin, and we're less likely to overeat and overeat the wrong foods. Often your big, highly processed big companies out there will have the millions of dollars to put into this kind of bliss point research. So where possible, go with your cleaner brands, eat whole foods where possible. If you're making low meals, I've mentioned it before, have your clean brands. If you make that raw caramel slice on the Muscle Mama community, for example, you're not going to eat the whole thing. You'll eat until you're satisfied. It's very hard to overeat those, those really dense clean treats because they're full of nutrients as well. One last thing on ghrelin and leptin is that low D3 has been linked to low leptin. So that can lead to that insatiable hunger. So that basically can tell your brain, oh, I've had enough. So if you're low in D3, obviously sunlight, that's a given. Get out there for 10 to 20 minutes a day in the middle of the day. It's a bit hot up here in Queensland at the moment, so even in the morning you're getting some good D3 production. But you can actually have foods like egg yolks, salmon, are great for maintaining D3, but they're also good for insulin sensitivity. So two really good foods there to help manage blood sugar, help manage insulin and in turn cortisol, but it will actually help with leptin production as well. You can get your D3 levels tested. If they're on the lower end, I would be getting onto a supplement as well. I do the Poliquin range. If you ever want anything, there's a really good product called Mega D3, and that just pumps up your D3 really quickly if you already know you've got a low D3, but you can get that tested. The last two hormones I wanted to speak about today, and this is just an extract from my ebook, Eat for Hormone Balance, is dopamine and serotonin. So basically with dopamine, that's the hormone that makes us feel energetic. A lot of people are saying now people are hooked on social media because it gives them a dopamine hit. A dopamine hit is like, it's like that excitement that you get. It's that driving feeling that you get. It's that sort of motivation. But what happens is if we secrete too much of that and there's no balance with serotonin, it can actually set off too much cortisol in the body. So the secret really to dopamine and serotonin is to make sure we balance both of them, and we can do that through our food. There's a couple of amino acids, L-tyrosine and tryptophan. Both of those amino acids help produce more dopamine and help produce serotonin. So it makes sense that we can choose foods that will try to create more dopamine and foods that will create more serotonin at the right times of day. So generally speaking, dopamine, that motivation hormone, that's the one we want first thing in the morning. That's the one we want when we want to be amped, we want to be pumped, we want to get our work done, we want to be more focused. And then serotonin is the hormone that we want to produce to wind us down, relax us, get us in a sleepy state. They're basically, as a rule of thumb, they're the two ways you want to be, being aware of these hormones to help balance them. So the amino acids that are produced, tyrosine and tryptophan, the brain uses tyrosine for dopamine, and then tryptophan for serotonin. Serotonin is also made up in your gut, which I'll get to in a little bit, but we can have gut-friendly foods to help with serotonin production as well. Serotonin really is what makes us feel good. If we're secreting too much dopamine, we'll often find that serotonin won't be produced as much. So it's great to have a balance of both for even things like reducing anxiety and depression. Now they're linking too much dopamine with cortisol from too much phone use. And I've done this before. I've been trying to organise our Christmas holiday, which is becoming a little bit of a tricky one because of all the border closures. We were planning on going to Sydney. And I was up late even last night just looking at flights, looking at accommodation, looking at flexi fees and all the rest. And what I found was I was on my phone till 9:30, 10, and I could not for the life of me get to sleep. And I thought, I'm a great sleeper. And and I know the theory, put down your phone, just switch it off, don't look at it. But it's the dopamine release that happens when you're looking at your phone, because your brain goes into this automated kind of, all right, I've got to get this done, this done, this done. So those tasks or that screen time is best done in the morning and during the day where permittable. I know we've got busy lifestyles, so it's sometimes hard. And then switch it off, because you'll get a better night's sleep. That's going to help with fat loss. It's going to help with all your other hormone health. And look, it's a discipline, but it's definitely one that when you do it, I forgot how much it wires me. So tonight I'll be definitely getting rid of the phone. But some of the foods, going back to food, that we can have are things that are tyrosine rich. So they've got amino acids in them that are going to help produce more dopamine. So things like beef, lamb, seeds, eggs, and beans are just some of the examples we can have. Now, when I come to doing a sample meal plan, you'll see that I've used a lot of these dopamine foods more during the day and in the morning. So it sounds a bit weird, but beef for breakfast or for your first meal, I can't do beef too early, but I could do beef, say 10 o'clock in the morning. People will look at you like, oh my gosh, you're eating red meat at 10 o'clock in the morning. But I'm telling you, it actually really makes that dopamine kick in, and you'll find it not only just sets up your blood sugar, but you'll be more alert, more switched on. I often eat eggs as well for my first official meal. I have a little bit of LSA before I go to the gym. That's just kind of lines the tummy. But my first official meal, I always try and get at least some eggs on the plate. And if I can get some red meat on there, I feel amazing for the rest of the day. Beans are another one. I mean, I don't really have the time to cook beans, but I love just frying them in a little bit of olive oil and even chuck some almonds or seeds in there. But something like that for your first meal would really give you that dopamine hit. If you feel very fatigued during the day, it might be ideal to look at more dopamine foods or tyrosine-enriched foods to help you out with producing more dopamine. If you struggle in the night to wind down, then you want foods that have more tryptophan in them. I think some of you guys have been on the Poliquin products for a while. They do a magnesium that's got L-tryptophan in it. So they've added that amino acid into the formula, and it's a magnesium that's specifically for sleep. So often that really helps. But if you're, not looking to supplement and you want to try and improve that kind of wind down feeling at night, then some of the foods that are tryptophan enriched are things like dark chocolate, dried dates and turkey. Obviously with dark chocolate, going back to insulin, we don't want to be having a heap of dark chocolate because that's going to spike up that sort of blood sugar. But we can have a little bit just to set off the serotonin, particularly if you, struggle to wind down. And I know since having Isabella, I don't know if it helps with breast milk production, but certainly a little bit of dark chocolate at night has just made me feel very relaxed. And I often breastfeed, after I've had a little bit of dark chocolate. And I feel like that winds my child down as well, funnily enough. So Isabella's always been a good sleeper. She's had her moments, but overall, so I feel like some of these serotonin foods can actually help with, breastfeeding if you're at that stage, or just in general, just feeling relaxed and wound down at night. You want to try and blunt cortisol because, if you've got cortisol going on, if you've got dopamine going on, then what you'll find is that, you'll have cortisol going on. So that's not good for anyone. And I'm sure I was having cortisol flooded in my body late last night, which didn't help me sleep. It was, I was like, oh, I haven't felt like this in ages. It was like a good lesson. And I thought, oh, that's good. I'll be able to speak about that today. even I know all the theory and sometimes don't apply it. Sample meal plan. So this is all an extract from my Eat for Hormone Health book. As you can see, I've pretty much put in a smaller amount of protein for breakfast. The only rationale I've got for that is basically when I've spoke to people over the years, they find it difficult to stomach a big bit of animal protein first thing in the morning. Some people are awesome at it, but most people want that gradual kind of increase or build. So for breakfast, which for some of you might be meal one, so if some of you are doing like sort of intermittent fasting and you're pushing out your first meal of the day, then, breakfast might be a little bit later. But when you have that first meal, you want at least 50 grams of protein on your plate. I'm a big believer in rotation. So, we get stuck in the habit of having the same thing every day. You can see I've put a lot of variety in here. If you're a bit picky with your food, then sure, like have similar foods, but mix it up every now and then. Also rotate your seasonings, which will help, and rotate your fats, rotate your oils, rotate all the things that will actually make the foods taste different. And that should help you stick to a higher protein nutrition plan as well. This is more moderate carb. You can still have quite a bit of, fruit salad, things like that, just to help with your overall carb intake. Just have more of your kind of lower insulin response or low GI, fruits like pear, berries, as opposed to, say, watermelon or something that's quite high in carbohydrates or high in insulin response. Basically, the higher GI something is, it's going to produce more insulin in your body, and we're trying to sort of, decrease the amount of insulin our body's producing overall and have our blood sugar a little bit more managed or a little bit more level. I do most of my measurements per site, so you can see I've got 50 grams, 150, 100. I've kind of, mixed it up so that you might have less grams at night, more in your middle meal of the day. So you might have your biggest, I find for me, my biggest hit of protein and calories and, carbs and fats would be my second meal. So I just got a little notification come up. What I would do is I would have that, and then I would have something smaller at night. It's just the way that I've felt works for me. But everyone's different. Generally speaking, it's good to have a good amount of protein in the middle of the day. That's going to help set up your blood sugar. You're more active during the day, so it also makes sense to have that bigger meal. When you're measuring by site, just get used to what 50 grams feels like, raw measure. So when you're doing chicken mince, for example, what does 50 grams look like? Because it looks very different cooked. 50 grams cooked looks a lot smaller than 50 grams raw. So you want to make sure you're getting in enough protein for the day. For a female, I usually shoot for a minimum of 80 actual protein. Okay, so that equates to about 400 grams roughly, raw measure. So, you're looking at close to half a kilo of animal protein a day. Now, you might not like animal protein, so that 80 grams can come from a combination of vegan protein, so plant-based, and it can come from things like eggs as well. So you notice in the 50 grams of protein that I've got is mixed with egg as well, so that bumps up your overall protein for the day. Protein is pretty much of most importance. So if you're sticking to that, your chances are you're going to hit the right amount of carbs and the right amount of fats. When I look over someone's meal plan for the first time, the biggest mistake I see is they've got too little protein. So in order to make up the protein, they have to eat more carbohydrates. That's a given. Unless they really like fats, and often a lot of people, they might be scared of eating fats because of the calorie content, which you shouldn't be. Or they'll just, they'll have too much of like the wrong foods because they're not eating protein. Protein pretty much sets up your blood sugar, sets up your insulin, and it sets up your hormones, so I can't go on enough about how to get that protein in. Try and be clever about it. Rotate your protein sources. There's a good variety there. You can have anything from sardines, prawns, which kind of brings me on to the next thing here. So as you can see up top here, this is your best foods to eat list. And if you guys are already doing my program, you already have access to this. This is in the manual. You've got your fats, you've got your proteins, you've got your carbs, you've got your seasonings, you've even got your vegan protein sources. So things like tempeh, which is really good for vegans. That's got a really good source of protein. Miso, legumes, quinoa, chickpeas, pea protein powder. Vegetarians eat whole eggs. I'm not too sure about bone broth and vegans. I'm not 100% sure on that. But yeah, that you can have bone broth there as well as a source of protein. Your carbohydrates, I've got your list of fibrous starches. Often I find people that stick more to the fibrous lose body fat faster. In some cases, I've found people that have digestive issues, they need to watch how much fibrous carbs they have, so they might have to have a bit more starchy carbs in their diet. But generally speaking, fibrous carbs will produce less insulin. So once your body, stops producing less insulin, it'll start to really burn body fat. When you're a bit glycogen depleted, your body has no choice but to start burning fat. So that's why we kind of try to limit some of those high insulin response or carbohydrates in the diet. You got your seasonings. So as I said, when you're starting to get a bit bored with your nutrition plan, you can mix it up with your lemon, lime, pepper, veggie stock, all of those there. There's so many of them. Nuts, seeds, you've got other fats, organic butter, avocado, halloumi, goats. So, you're having up to 6 palms a day there. And then your loads, which I said 1 to 2 times per week, no limit. So you can have as much as you like on those. These are just guidelines. Like I said before, if you've got a pretty high metabolism, you might eat more than that. This is just for the person starting out. With supplementation, if you're not great with food, you do need to be on some sort of good multivitamin. If you're deficient in any vitamins or minerals, it's going to affect your hormone health. It'll affect everything from your leptin, which we spoke about before, your serotonin, because 80 to 90% is produced in the gut. So if we've got gut issues from eating the wrong foods, that's going to reduce the amount of serotonin our body's making. B vitamins assist in overall hormone balance as well. And then your amino acids. So not only are you ingesting amino acids from your food, but you can have them in supplement form as well. If you're not a massive meat eater, I would definitely look at something like a leucine, particularly if you're vegetarian or vegan and you struggle, because that's going to help hair, skin, nails, muscle recovery, muscle repair, blood sugar. It's going to help with everything basically to help your body stay hormonally healthy. Glycine's another one which a lot of people are getting great results from. And these I sell. This week's actually my order week. Some of you guys are already on it, but you can put your orders in there. And look, these are good even if your diet is great, but if you feel like your food's not awesome, but you want to kind of step it up a little bit and see some results, then yeah, definitely at least consider the BCAA. That would be like my number one. Glycine's awesome. They're all great, but yeah, the BCAAs in particular if you're struggling with protein. I've got about 3 minutes left, so I'll try and speed it up now. If you do need help, some of you guys I noticed are already on my program, so well done. You can sign up. You get all the tools you need for fat loss and toning and hormone health. And every 28-day program comes with weekly coaching calls. There is accountability monthly that we do, but you can decide to do the coaching calls even with accountability. So if you're on accountability at the moment and you want to do coaching calls, let me know because I'll book you in. You get a free ebook if you decide to sign up after this webinar. So the ebook pretty much is reiterating everything we've spoke about today. And then you've got the phase 1, 2, or 3. So you just move through the phases. So if you've already done phase 2, you might move on to phase 3. Or if you're just starting out for the first time, you can start on phase 1. The coaching calls, we pretty much make it more individualized. So one of the things I've found over the years is I keep repeating myself, but I say, you know, you've got to find what works for you. You know the foundations, you know the theory for hormone, health, but now it's looking at what works for you. So that's some of the things we look at when we do our coaching calls. It's just going that next step with individualizing it. And I find a lot of the time it's stress management as well, putting in stress management strategies and really just simple tools to help you achieve, you know, those small baby steps. These are some of the results over the years. You might recognize yourself there. And then this is my special that I've got today. So 25% off, $89.95. Usually, I think it works out to be about 64, 67. So that's on for the next 24 hours. You can go to this link here, new products to claim. If you're past phase 3, you'll have to contact me directly because I've got up to phase 12 designed, but I don't have it on the website. So you can reach out to me and I can set up your coaching calls as well. So that's pretty much it from me. Stay connected if you're not already. I'll just put my head back up on the screen and say goodbye to everyone.